Bobby Charles, great to have you back with us.
Always great to be here, and important days too.
It sure is, Bobby. We are back together to talk today about a historic event which still serves as a beacon for the world today. This week includes the 79th anniversary of D-Day, arguably one of the most historic, courageous, and consequential days of the past century. I want to talk about how we can fix misplaced priorities at defense and honor those who fell on D-Day. Now, this is a day that Ronald Reagan described in 1984 as decisive for the world in his famous Normandy speech on D-Day's 40th anniversary. So, Bobby, let's start with the beaches of Normandy, France, June 6th, 1944, and the stakes for the world, what tens of thousands of Americans did that day. And then since you have been there, you've walked those beaches alone in 1983, what it felt like to be there where it all happened.
I'd like to just appreciate that. What a great opening and a great discussion point. I'd like to take people, Rebecca, back to those beaches today. And I did quietly walk them alone in 1983, a year before Reagan came out and gave what was truly one of his best speeches of all time, perhaps one of the best speeches given by any president. And people should go back and look at that. The enormity of what occurred is what is hard to imagine. It was a tremendous gamble where they not only pushed, every dollar to the center of the board, they pushed every life to the center of the board. It's hard to put your arms around this, but let me just try. These five beaches, Omaha, Utah, Sword, Juneau, and Gold, stretched 50 miles. We had to take all of them, and then we had to link them from behind the lines. The Germans had 200,000 emplacements. They had 40,000 soldiers on those beaches already. They all had the high ground above the cliffs and above the dunes. It had to be secret. It had to be completely undisclosed by surprise in order to make it work. They had 1.5 million Americans in Great Britain at the time. Actually, 287,000 boarded 7,000 ships and secretly snuck up on that coast. And then 156,115 either went ashore or dropped from airplanes. It was a stunning, stunning turn, and it could have gone all wrong. In fact, it was supposed to go off on June 5th, and as it turned out, that was a horrid storm. But a meteorologist who was advising then Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower, later our president, said, it's better to wait because we might get a break in the storms on the 6th. Had they gone on the 5th, it would have been a disaster. If they'd gone 2 weeks later when the moon was back again, it would have been a disaster, and probably they would have been detected. But we lost 6,000 young Americans on that one day on that set of beaches. We lost about 10,500 by the time they'd taken the beachhead. By the time they got to Paris, we had 60,000 casualties. But it is the event in the last 100 years that really decided, in many ways, the future of the world. Because as I've talked with and interviewed, and a lot of the World War II vets, and one of the things that one of them whispered to me quietly in his mid-90s recently was the Nazis could have won. They were hard fighters. There was nothing inevitable about it. So I think divine intervention interceded a lot in that encounter and throughout the war. But I think that it was a stunning day, a day that showed tremendous individual courage by all these young men boys really, from 16 to 29 were the rough ages of most of them, and they did something truly spectacular. And you just need to go back and hear Reagan's speech in 1984 to understand what it was like. And to be honest, chills went up my spine when I stood among those crosses looking down and stood down on those beaches looking up. It's hard to fully describe.
My grandfather served in World War II, and he's written a memoir. Of course, he's no longer with us, but I'm excited to at one point in time get that out so that more and more people can read, because these are stories that we cannot forget. I mean, just a little context: America lost 2,996 on 9/11, and on that day, those events are always in our memory. It's a headline. The total Normandy invasion cost America 135,000 casualties, left a total of 29,000 dead. Why is that still not a headline? But Let me get more concrete, not ask rhetorical questions, since we know the media regularly fails to celebrate our nation's patriots, both past and present. Concretely, Bobby, what should we take away from the preparation, the daring sacrifice, the loss, and the decisive nature of D-Day?
I think I'm going to give you two answers to that question. The first is I think every young American should just pause to watch the speech that Reagan gave or read a little bit about that day, walk through a military cemetery, go talk with a vet and say, what motivated you to go to war for us? What motivated you? There's veterans homes all over the country. We've only got about 250,000 World War II vets out of 16 million left. But, the first thing is I think we need to be motivated to remember and understand that America is not an accident. It is the product of enormous sacrifice, and they represent that. The second thing ultimately is we need to be prepared for the future. I mean, we've got real adversaries out there that have a beat on us. They really want to take us down as badly in many ways as I think the World War II stakes were. I mean, we've got China and Russia and Iran and North Korea, and we've got others that we don't talk about out there constantly presenting themselves as a potential replacement for us, dominance, going to war with us. So we need to prepare as we did then. We need to prepare and we need to be aware of the stakes and we need to believe and love this country, believe in what we are. We are the beacon of the world. I tell you that having spent time in 50 countries, we are the beacon of the world. The world looks to us. That's why they're crossing our border in such high numbers. They look to us as the one last place, the city on the hill, where it can really be, you can realize your dreams and that pursuit of happiness and that freedom is real. And so we need to start protecting that a lot more aggressively.
Yeah. And we need to count on strong leadership that is continuing to carry that message on. So it's one thing that we do here at AMAC is we try to get this information in front of our AMAC members, and a lot of your great articles can be found on our website at amac.us and on the news app, which, by the way, the AMAC news app is sponsoring today's show. So for all of our listeners, go ahead and download the AMAC news app or the AMAC app. There's everything there, everything from your member benefits, great articles, interactive games, and polls. Bobby, another threat is one right here at home. Another threat here at home that is the nation's drug problem. Now, I know that this means so much to you. You wrote a lot about this. You did a lot of successful drug legislation for Newt Gingrich in the 1990s, and we seem to have lost so much ground. I mean, I just saw yesterday on the news that we've got vending machines being put up in New York City, allowing people to get Narcan and condoms and everything else that they might need as they are partying and doing all kinds of things. I feel bad for the people in those neighborhoods because it's attracting a certain group of people that is not good for society. Now, Bobby, you spend time across the globe in Colombia, Bolivia, Peru, Central America. You've been fighting this. How bad is it here in America? How can we get things under control?
Rebecca, we have truly lost our way on this issue. And I would encourage everybody listening to stop for a minute and think, and then tell your neighbors to start looking at what's going on around them. I recently got a call from a family, since I've worked in this area for many years, saying that a daughter who was a completely committed to being a good kid got dragged off in the wrong direction and is now stuck with fentanyl, having to battle a habit of fentanyl, which ultimately will kill her if she doesn't get off it. Look, we have had a tripling of the opioid deaths, chiefly illegal narcotics, heroin, and particularly, we've had heroin, we've had crack, we've had cocaine, we've had meth upticks, but we've also had a huge fentanyl uptick, a tripling among adolescents between 2019 and today. Last year we lost, the year before last, we lost 108,000 reported last year kids to this. We've actually, it's become the number one killer of Americans between the ages of 18 and 40, I think. This year, law enforcement folks privately are telling me you can expect 130,000 dead Americans from this. And why is this happening? It's happening because we let down our guard in a huge way. And it is a national security issue. The money goes back to the Mexican cartels and to terrorists around the world. I could name the groups, but you know them. And the bottom line is we've let down our border guard. We've let down our support for countries like Colombia in a counter narcotics effort. We've decided publicly not to bother to talk about it. We don't talk about it in the world of prevention. We don't talk about it in terms of providing treatment at large numbers. We've basically walked away from this problem, and it's the elephant in the room. You can destroy America from the outside in, but you can destroy it from the inside out. And that is especially true when you go after our kids. So the ones that are falling to this are young Americans, the ones just like being victimized in schools where parents are being told that they can't play a role anymore. This is a huge issue on which parents must play a role. Only 25% of American parents talk to their kids much about drugs. But we tell our kids to look both ways when they walk across the street. We ought to be telling them, be on guard, because this is out there, and there are people, predators, an entire predatory industry dedicated to taking down and addicting and killing young Americans. And fentanyl is the poster drug for this movement. And I ask myself, and I ask so many friends around me, why aren't the state leaders, the national leaders that know these numbers, why aren't they going after this? We did not have this problem 10 years ago. It was not like this. So it's a fundamental shift, and at a certain point, quantitative changes become qualitative changes, and they ultimately end up taking down the country. So we've got to get after the fentanyl issue, and we got to be real about it, and we've got to believe that it's a national security threat.
Amen. I mean, it really is bad, Bobby. The numbers are unbelievable. It was my son, I think, who said to me, Mom, government just wants people more dependent. This is why they're legalizing marijuana. And, certainly this point of view can go in a lot of directions. But in his view, it was, the more the government gives to you and the more you can get, the more dependent you'll be, the more votes they'll get. That sort of thing. And if they're playing to an audience that doesn't understand the dangers here, boy, oh boy, that's a really, really risky game to play. So this is really bad. We're praying that we've got good leadership, that we can turn things around and get things back under control. Robert Charles, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always great to have you with me. Your insights and your candor, so important, and look forward to having you back with us again soon.
Always my pleasure. And, the world gets dangerous and is dangerous. But I think as long as we keep our eye on the ball, it's not about winning in a permanent way. It's about winning every day and staying alert and staying ahead of the bad guys. And we have, unfortunately, a proliferation of poor leaders and bad guys in the world. And we need to be after that.
Keep up the great fight. Thanks again, Robert Charles.